My name is Vladimir Gorchakov. Welcome all today participants. So just a technical requirement, please be on mute when you are not speaking, then we can unmute participants of today's webinar. So today's webinar is dedicated to our end of year discussion of Russia's credit rating and credit risks. In Russia, we are welcome all speakers from Russia, Germany, other European countries, and I see some attendees from other CIS countries. So our today's speakers, I see Matthias Schepp just join us. So I would like to ask my colleague.
You are on mute. Okay. Vladimir.
Hello.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Great. We can see Matthias Schepp, head of the Russian-German Chamber of Commerce. We see my colleague Denis Anokhov from Rating Service of RAEX-Europe. Also today we have Vasilisa Baranova from Gazprom Bank. Evgenia Loktionova from the Department of Lipetsk, Department of Investment and Innovation of Lipetsk region. And finally, our last but not least speaker for today is Sergei Smirnov, Deputy Director of Center of Development Institute of High School of Economy. As we discuss, so we will start with an overview presentation from Mr. Schepp. So Mr. Schepp, let us know if you need the presentation now or you just make a speech. So please check your microphone. So far we can.
I think microphone should be fine. Hello, everybody.
Okay, great. We can hear you and we can see you. So then the place is yours with the results of survey of members of Russian-German Chamber of Commerce, which was just recently published.
Okay. So, ladies, gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be with you. And probably there are 2-3 main points. And they are kind of contradictory. First, I would like to tell you give you a couple of information about the Russian Chamber of Commerce. We are 1,000 members. Most of them, around 65%, are German enterprises actively being in Russia, and 23% are Russian enterprises, and the others mainly German-speaking countries like Switzerland and Austria, but also some international companies from United States and France. Concerning the overall economic situation in Russia, our members are quite negative, I would say. They don't expect significant growth in 2021. But when we ask them, what is the situation in your enterprise, then it's just the opposite. So more than 50%, 52% are saying they are satisfied with the situation, and more than 20% say the situation is good, and 7-8% are saying situation is very good. So if you add these numbers, you have around 80% of the enterprises who are happy with the situation, and only around 10% saying the situation is bad or very bad. From this, we can conclude that German companies in Russia are actually winners of the crisis. For us, that's no surprise, because in in every crisis, our company are gaining market share. Why is this? I would say, first, our companies bring the most modern technology to Russia into their factories. The factories are quite new, and so they are highly competitive. They are very efficient. And if I think about even some very well-known enterprises like Class, they are doing harvest machinery and Paruski Combine. I don't know what's in English, only in German and Russian. And they built a factory in Krasnodar for more than 180 million euro. And this factory is just more modern than the factory in Germany. Second, the companies are usually well managed, and they treat their employees very well, also in the crisis. Though they don't set off people, and these three factors contribute to this kind of interesting phenomena that in every crisis our companies are winning market shares. Of course, some companies face huge challenges and difficulties. If you think about the car industry, of course, yeah, even they are all gaining market share. But if you look at Volkswagen, in spite of gaining market share, the profits are declining strongly because many spare parts components they have still to import, and due to the decline in the value of the ruble, this has become very expensive. Also, we have seen in the third quarter of this year, according to the numbers of the German Federal Bank, of the Bundesbank, a return of positive German netto investment. So when we compare the inflow and the outflow of German capital, 2020 started fantastically, was almost 2 billion, 1.8 billion of net inflow. So there was much more inflow, but also some outflow. And then due to Corona, the second quarter looked quite bleak, with around 1 billion capital outflow. But in the third quarter, we are nicely back with 800 million euro netto direct investment of German companies in Russia. We asked, okay, that's just a footnote. We asked about the political situation between the two countries, Germany and Russia. And no surprise, after Navalny and other tensions and things, 70% of the companies said they are worse than they were the year before. And they said they are bad, 70%, and the year before only 8% said that this, relations are bad. On the other hand, we asked what the companies are planning in the short run next year. So more than 1/3 are going to employ people and are going to enlarge their investments, which is very good news. And also by the numbers of the participating companies, how many million they will invest, we do see that 21 by all likelihood will be another good year of German investment in Russia. We asked in the long term and middle term whether Russia and the Russian market will be more or less, will be the the importance of the Russian market for the company, whether it will be the same or less or more. And the overwhelming majority of 80% considered that the market will be of growing importance, or even very much growing importance. So I'm open to any questions if there are questions, and otherwise wish you a very nice conference. I will stay with you around 30 minutes, then I have to rush.
Great, Matthias. Thank you very much for your participation. We know that you are now in Mainz, here in Germany, near Frankfurt, actually. So hope to see you probably personally, but this time I think it will be difficult, even being not so far from each other. So I have a question as a moderator. So for all participants, we see many Russian regions here. We see German companies where we can see the results of this array and these polls, where it's published, and where we can read about these numbers.
You can find it on our website, which is www.russland-ahk.ru.
Thank you very much, and I remind everyone that
I write it into the chat so everybody can see it. Yeah.
Great. And I remind all participants that you can send your questions to the chat. As Matthias mentioned, for some time he will be here. So if you have any questions to Matthias, please submit them to the chat. And saying that, I would like just to mention that recently we okay, so we already have a question to Matthias. So which industries do you think will invest in the modernization, buying capital equipment according to your investigations?
I mean, we see a lot of investment into logistics. Yeah, they are also into supermarkets like Globus. They were investing 70 million euro in a new logistics center in Moskovsky Oblast. And clearly they don't do that for the 17 or 18 markets they already have in Russia. They are doing that because they will enlarge their business. And also logistics companies like DHL, Kühne + Nagel, Renos, they are all employing more people. They are enlarging their business in Russia, and they are all taking a long-term perspective. Just in November in Krasnodar, Renos also started work on a logistics center. Besides logistics, agriculture, yeah. So this is going well, and pharma and healthcare also. The biggest challenges are now in the automobile industry, because yeah, I mentioned before. So it's they are facing pressure probably from two sides. Okay, sales this year were quite okay, especially for German companies, but they have to raise prices as far as even in the cars produced in Russia. Naturally, they are not localized to 100%, maybe to 70 or 80%. And the remaining spare parts are now much more, are more expensive now.
Thank you very much. We have actually now more questions, so I would prefer to keep with them, and then we have another presentation. So second question is very interesting for us, since we are just last week with also support and participation of AHK, we have a big conference about the green finance with more than 300 participants and around 30 speakers. So any ESG, environmental social governance criteria, were they included in the survey from HK?
No, they are not included, but of course ESG sustainability had become for quite some time a very important factor for, I would say, almost for any company. Yeah, and it's not only for the rated companies or companies being at the stock exchange, also for small business, medium-sized business. It's of growing importance, and also I would say to be a responsible citizen, to be a responsible corporate citizen has always been a strength of German family-owned and medium-sized business. Yeah, that's in their DNA. So ESG is a win-win for our companies. And there might be some exclusions or bad examples you can always find, but in general we are doing very well. Oh, I like the third question of a German of Bernd Müller.
So before you start answering your question, a few comments from my side about sustainability. So the information I get from AHK actually today, that Minister of Foreign Development of Germany, Heiko Maas, and Lavrov just signed the beginning of sustainable year between Germany and Russia. That's one point, and another point that just at the beginning of January, we will start our sustainability webinars also with AHK with a topic of green tech platform, which is maintained by members of AHK, and we are really excited to start our year ESG webinars with you as well. And the last question, finally, sorry for interruption, about the banks. So what do you think, Matthias?
Okay, the question was, did you ask German banks for their opinion concerning the future importance of the Russian market for their business as well? Of course, we asked them. We don't know exactly what they answers, because it's anonymous. Yeah, but of course the German banks, they are facing quite some pressure, that for sure can be said, and besides probably homegrown problems, there's also pressure from outside. The ones who follow the international media and the press, they know that Deutsche Bank was asked by the Americans to shut their business in Russia, and we will see how this fight will end, same as we will see how other fights will end if we look at Nord Stream and other projects. They are clearly different interests.
Great, thank you very much. We are also aware of this problem and this situation. It's actually not only in Germany, it's a global trend. Unfortunately, saying that, I would like to say thank you very much, Matthias, for participation today. So if you have some additional questions in the chat and you have time, I hope you will answer them. Or otherwise, you can, all participants can send us the questions, and then we will transfer them to Matthias. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I would like to introduce my colleague, Denis Anokhov from rating service of RAEX-Europe. He is responsible for Russia. And Denis, we would like to ask you about the Russia credit rating update. And we know that you have a small presentation up to 5-7 minutes. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. I will try to be short in 5-7 minutes, but I'm not sure. So, okay, and traditionally I will start with a short presentation of RAEX-Europe. So the agency based in Frankfurt since 2013, and we are registered by the European Securities Market Authority. And yeah, our rating is useful for regulatory purposes in the European Union. And we have a team, very experienced team in the analytical research and risk analysis. And here you see our 4 core areas of our services. First of all, credit ratings, classical for corporates, financial institutions, and sovereigns. The second, our direction, and so also we are developing this year and last 2 years, it's sustainability products, corporate ESG ratings, and our ESG database and ESG ratings for regions. And as well as green bond, social bond second opinions. Also, we are organizing events. Vladimir mentioned about our last events and research. Also, we are making industry research and counterparty research. So let's turn to update of Russia credit rating. As you can see from our credit rating list, on 11th of December, we confirmed credit rating of Russia at BBB minus level, both for national and foreign currency, with a stable outlook, which means moderately high level of credit worthiness. And our decision mainly reflects the increased resilience of external shocks of the economy and our expectation about gradually recovery next years after the COVID-19 crisis. And this year we observed a significant downturn in GDP growth. The economy, after the weak GDP growth in the first quarter 2020, the economy was followed by a reversal trend in April caused by the restrictive measures in response to COVID-19 and situation on the oil market as well. As a result, we see in the second quarter, the economy contracted by 8.5%, and it's expected to decline further, decline by overall 4.5%. It's our expectation by the end of 2020. As a response, the government implemented anti-crisis measures, spending on the healthcare, stimulating and direct and financial and indirect financial support to the population and businesses. Also, you can see on the right chart that during 10 months of 2020, the current account balance, which is highly dependent on the oil revenue, it weakened to 2.2% of GDP compared to almost 4% for the same period last year. And as a result, this year we are awaiting deterioration of current account position due to the lower output of oil production according to the new OPEC Plus agreement. And looking ahead, we're expecting, as I said, a recovery next year's if the threat of COVID-19 will decrease. In the long term, the economy is still constrained by the structural problems, the excessive footprint of the state in the economy, in the banking sector, and also weak institutions, development of institutions which constrain the investments, innovation, and competition in the country. Given the lower inflation in the first quarter and negative impact of COVID-19, the regulator, Central Bank of Russia, shift from neutral to accommodative monetary policy, and this resulted in the significant reduction of the key rate during the year to a record low 4.25%. This created the environment for low market interest rates and yields for government and corporate bonds. However, after the first quarter, we see the annual inflation accelerated, and it was accelerated to 4.4% in November, as the consumer prices were under pressure of weakening ruble. And to stabilize the market and support exchange rate fluctuation stability, the central bank shifted from the purchases of foreign currency on the market to sales of the foreign currency, including additional amount above the current fiscal rule limits. You can see that Russia has now solid international reserves, which have increased since the beginning of the year to almost 600 billion US dollars. And we consider that the Russia external position is its strength, and which support the credit rating and the stability, and can help to absorb external shocks. So this year, we see that additional financing from the budget of anti-crisis measures amount to almost 4% of GDP. And along with this additional expenditure from the budget, there is a decline in budget revenue, especially oil revenue. And also because of tax relaxation for businesses, we see a decline of revenue, and as such, we expect the general government budget deficit could reach 6% of GDP this year. To support these additional expenditures, and for the government decided temporarily to relax current fiscal rule, and it will allow to use oil to increase oil expenditures and to use funds from the National Wealth Fund. As you can see on the right chart, the accumulated funds in the National Wealth Funds, they reached 12% of GDP this year. Also, the government has space to maneuver and mobilize financial resources from the domestic market. The gross government debt may reach 20% of GDP by the end of this year, but overall, this debt level is the lowest among, one of the lowest among the developing countries, and the government can space to attract resources on the market. Also, as you can see on the right pie chart, the largest share of the debt consists of domestic sovereign bonds, and while the share of foreign currency liabilities is only 20%, which creates low risk and exposure to currency risks. Besides, the debt has favorable maturity structure, and with the short-term liabilities only 5% of the total debt. And as I mentioned, the main source of new borrowings remain the domestic market, as United States sanctions restrict the ability to attract to issue debt denominated in the US dollars. And now we turn to the banking industry. So overall, the profitability in the banking sector persists, and despite the negative impact of COVID-19, the banking sector is showing resilience. We see that return on assets and return on equity was favorable at almost 2% and 17% as of the third quarter. However, we see that decline in profit, especially in income, in interest income, due to low interest environment. And On the positive side, the capital adequacy strengthened to almost 13%, and banking sector has accumulated solid capital stocks, which can help absorb possible losses in the future. And also, along with the softening of monetary policy, the regulator, central bank, with the purpose to boost lending, relaxed certain capital adequacy requirements for banks. And in the first 10 months, the bank's assets grew by almost 12%, supported by active lending in the corporate sector. Retail lending also rebounded in the second quarter after the lifting of restrictive measures and launching the stimulus mortgage program by the government for population. Banks were also given the right to postpone the creation of reserves for borrowers which were more affected by the crisis. And since the beginning of the year, beginning of the lockdown, Russian banks have already restructured up to 10% of their loans portfolios. Of course, these measures, they help temporarily to delay the worsening of loans, and the level of NPL, as you can see, were stable but still high at 9.3% this year. However, we consider that the quality of loans will deteriorate and worsening next year, and the NPL is still a potential risk to the banking system in the medium term. In addition, we see that the potential risk of materialization of liabilities of state enterprises and state-owned banks are also risks for the Russia creditworthiness. As you can see, that's Russia banking system is highly concentrated, and state-owned banks share almost 70%, and the concentration on this of loans on state sector is very high. And also, additionally, in our credit rating decision, we are taking into account stress factors for the Russia, which reduce the credit rating. And first, as I mentioned, it's high dependence and concentration on oil and gas industry. Despite the decline this year, the share of oil and gas in exports still high, almost 50%, and share of oil gas budget revenue, related budget revenue, is almost 30% in this year. And the second stress factor is the sanctions risks, as Matthias Schepp mentioned. The stability of the economy is still threatened by sanction risks, and in the late 2019, it was imposed additional sanctions to the Nord Stream 2, and also the additional sanction packages for new public debt and state banks under discussion in the United States Congress. And I would like to finish with a table which present our sensitivity assessment. You can see the positive and negative scenario. I will not describe it because all these factors I mentioned in my presentation. And I just want to add that we will keep monitoring the situation in the Russian economy, and the next our rating decision for the Russia will be in June 2021. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. So if you have additional questions, I'm ready to answer.
Thank you very much, Denis. Thank you for the presentation. We're a little bit not on time, but we have some few very brief question about the NIM, the net interest margin, I guess, from the chart. I can tell from my side, because I also involved in the rating service for the Russia credit risk. So we still expect the decline of this indicator in the banking system for sure. So Denis, any specific forecast metrics for this?
Specific, I'm not sure, but yes, I think it also will depend on the further monetary actions of the central bank. But I think they will keep the current key rate. I think they will not change in the next decision. I think it will be this month, or yeah. I think my colleague from Gazprom Bank, she can also give some forecasts. And yeah, if the central bank will further relax their monetary policy, I think, yeah, we can expect the declining of net interest margin of the banks, and it will also weight the profitability. But yeah, there's also not income, not interest income. I think stable, still stable. Yeah, at least in the short term period. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's 2 questions left about the ESG ratings for ETF funds. It's yeah, thank you for mentioning this. We just assigned the ESG rating to RSHB Asset Management Fund. It's the first ESG rating assigned to ETF fund, and we hope to have the special webinar for this in first quarter. And all presentations with agreed from speakers will be distributed to all participants. And thank you, Matthias, for sharing the results. So if you have time, probably before we go to our colleagues from Gazprom Bank, Matthias, any comments on the presentation or any ideas for today's discussion?
No, I just apologize that they are just in Russian and German and not in English. So, but, okay.
Great. And saying that, I would like to give a microphone to Vasilisa Baranova, expert from the Center for Economic Focusing of Gazprom Bank, with the Russia macroeconomic outlook. So, Vasilisa, you can, yeah, so you share your screen. Great, we can see it, and then you can unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, great. We can see presentation and hear you. Great.
Okay, well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to participate at this webinar. My today's presentation is about Russia's macroeconomic outlook. And in fact, it will consist of 3 parts, which basically the most common and the most popular macroeconomic topics. These are economic growth, ruble exchange rate, and inflation and monetary policy. Let me start with the COVID-19 impact on the economic growth. We can artificially divide the negative consequences of the pandemic into 2 parts. The first one is the internal, and this is basically connected to all the lockdowns imposed. The second part of the group of the consequences is the external consequences, and and this shock arise due to a decline of the global demand. A low share of services in Russian GDP explains a low susceptibility of Russia to the internal shock. As you can see on the graph on the right part of the slide, the share of services in Russian GDP is about 54%, and it is lower than the world average and far less than the indicator for developed countries, for example, for the UK or for the US. The graph on the left part of the slide illustrates the COVID stringency index on the horizontal axis, and the GDP growth is located on the vertical axis. Here you can see the dots, which corresponds to biggest economies. The only exception is China. I have it excluded here. So dark blue dots is the first quarter, light blue dots is the second quarter, and red dots is the third quarter. As you see, most of the countries have made a journey this year from the upper left part of the graph to the center of the graph. And Russia has always been located on the upper part of this circle or oval, which means that Russia has on average performed better than other countries in terms of the economic growth. So yes, economic growth is on the vertical axis, so it was a little bit better. What about the external shock? Russia has, I would say, a modest susceptibility to this shock. The trade openness in Russia is lower than the world average. For example, in 2019, the share of exports of goods and services was around 28%, while the world average was 30%. Of course, it's important factor is that Russia is the natural resource rich countries, and it's a common feature for them that exports are volatile, but still the susceptibility in our view is lower than the world average. This low susceptibility to both internal and external shocks explain our quite good and positive forecast for the GDP growth this year. As you can see on the graph on the right part of the slide, we expect GDP growth in Russia to be around -3 to -3.5 this year. And in fact, it is quite good forecast because compared to developed countries, the most recent IMF projections, for example, for Germany is -6 and -10 is for the UK. Moreover, some fast economic indicators show that GDP growth is likely to be around -3 than to -3.5. Please look at the graph on the left part of the slide. Here you can see the 4-week moving average deviation of incoming financial flows from their kind of normal level. This data is published each week by Bank of Russia. It is a very useful tool for analyzing economic activity because it's a fast indicator and quite informative. As you can see here, the deviation was around 0. So that means that financial flows were quite close to their normal level. That means that the 4th quarter statistics might be better than the 3rd one. And this year may be close to -3. What about the next year? In 2021, our expectations are not very optimistic, I would say. We expect economic growth to be around -0 to -1, probably closer to -1. However, what are the main driving forces behind these negative and pessimistic expectations? The first one is our view on the domestic demand and its possible recovery. We believe that there will be a change in the consumption behavior, first of all, and the second factor that there will be lasting damage to investment. So these two reasons explain this forecast. Let's go to the second part of my presentation, and it is the ruble exchange rate. Unsurprisingly, ruble has depreciated this year. And now our expectations, what are the main reasons behind this depreciation? Of course, it was the decline of the investors' demand to emerging market assets. And the second reason is the decline in oil prices. What is interesting here? One interesting fact here is that the correlation between the ruble exchange rate and oil prices has reemerged this year. As you can see on the graph on the left part of the slide, these red dots correspond to oil prices and ruble exchange rate for the period from March this year to December this year. And you see that there is a kind of the negative relationship between these variables. And previously, for the period from January 2017 to February this year, there was no correlation. Why is it so? Well, here the main reason for this disappear of the correlation is the budget rule and the purchase of foreign currency made by Ministry of Finance and Central Bank. Here the budget rule is still in action, but we have correlation, negative correlation. The main reason is the increase in the risk premium. We believe that this phenomenon is temporary and it will finally disappear when the situation recovers. We think that in the next year, the ruble exchange rate will be about 71 to 74%, or 74, rubles per dollar. Now our assessment of the fair exchange rate is 73. And we see that the gap between Rubble, between actual and fair exchange rate has increased in the fall. And the main reason behind it were political factors. And now the gap is declining. So as I have said, the fair assessment of the fair Rubble exchange rate is 73. And now I think is about 73.5. Yes, our assessment for the next year is from 71 to 74. The third part of my presentation. Deflationary risks was the key reason for the central bank to ease its monetary policy and to cut the key rate. As you have seen, and I think that a similar graph was in Denis' presentation, the key rate now is 4.25, and we also expect it to remain on this level throughout the next year. One interesting thing here is that the central bank has lowered the neutral range of the key rate. So what is the neutral rate? Neutral rate is a kind of an observable and theoretical level of key rate that doesn't have any effect on economic activity. So that means that when the situation recovers, central bank will return to this level. So interest rates will be lower than they were in the pre-crisis period. This low interest rate environment is quite unusual for Russia, and we have never seen interest rates at as low level as they are now. What are the main trends which come on the back of this environment? The first one is the change in the household savings behavior. As you can see on the graph on the left part of the slide, here you can see the composition of household savings for the first 3 quarters in this year. As you see, there was the main driving force was the increase in the cash holdings, and this is and both in rubles and foreign currency. It is a common feature for all crises because of kind of flight to liquidity. Interesting thing here is that there was a substitution from deposits to current accounts. And also there was increase in net purchases of securities. In fact, this is, in our opinion, is a long-lasting trend, and it will continue. Now in Russia, according to our estimates, the share of securities which household hold is around 4.5 to 5%, and in developed countries, for example, in the US, it is more than 100%. Of course, there is a place to grow, and we expect that it will continue. What are the consequences of this household behavior on the banking sector? Well, first of all, and the consequences is increase in the brokerage fees from operations with securities. It is a good thing because of this low interest rate environment has negatively contributed to the net interest margin. And I remember that there was a question in the chat about the net interest margin forecast for this year. So we expect 3.6 this year. And increase in the commission fees is very important for banks because it is additional source of income. And we believe that this trend will continue. Well, I think that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vasilisa, for a very interesting presentation. So you already mentioned your forecast for net interest margin. I just would like to ask you, and then probably Denis again, just to highlight your expectation for the 2021 recovery and probably inflation, if you have these figures in your forecast.
Well, as I have already said about real economic growth, our forecast is from 0 to -1. And I have to mention here that the situation is still very uncertain. So everything highly depends on the vaccine and immunity. So if we will have this year decline of the economic growth not very large, about -3%. So the next year the growth will be also not very high. What about inflation? We expect it to remain somewhere around the Bank of Russia target, so around 4% next year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Denis. Could you repeat our expectations for these two metrics?
Yes, yes, I agree with Vasilisa that a lot depends on the situation with vaccine and developing of COVID crisis, but our expectations are more positive. I think for 2021, we're expecting economy recovery and GDP growth at 2 to 2.5%, and yes, it will of course depend on the implementation of national recovery plan for economy and gradually increase of oil output. Regarding inflation, I also agree that central bank will keep it close to its target 4%, and pressure of foreign currency will, and this pro-inflationary influence of weakening ruble will slightly decrease and next year, and due to weak domestic demand, it will also influence and make and have disinflationary influence. And yeah, we will think inflation will be in range between 4.5%.
Thank you, Vasilisa. There is another question to you. So about the return on investments on equity in the banking system, apparently highly volatile. And what are the reasons beyond the pandemic? So the pandemic is a problem for this, or what's the reason behind this?
Yes, of course, pandemic is a problem, but we expect that the biggest negative impact will be probably next year because of all the reserves and all the problems were transferred to the next year. So probably in 2021 we will see the return on equity lower than in this year. So maybe around 10%.
Yeah, so and the actually related question from my side. So we know this is now it's a restructuring of the banking loans, but what is your expectations for the really disclosed NPL for the next year? So what's the maximum we will reach next year?
Well, for this year, I think it will be around 6. And next year, there will definitely be some increase. Probably we'll see a number between 7 and 8%.
Okay,
I mean, overall, retail loans and corporate loans.
And among the sectors, what's your expectation? Like the risky one, the mortgage problem?
Well, now it's not a problem because it may become a problem, but there were a lot of news about the housing bubble and the mortgage crisis connected with the Russian economy. But I believe that it's not true yet. The share of mortgage to Russian GDP, all mortgage loans, is about 8%. And if we compare this number to other countries, for example, Spain or Ireland, which have already where we have already seen the mortgage crisis in 2008-2010 period, there has been the share of mortgage loans to GDP has been much higher, so it was about more than 50%. It is the first reason. The second one is that real housing prices have been increasing there for a long period of time, and for Russia we see only this increase this year. Of course, it probably can be a problem, but we have already seen that Bank of Russia has a good approach towards all bubbles and all these risk metrics and add-ons that it has imposed to decrease the unsecured lending and to decrease the risk associated with unsecured lending was successful. So probably we will not see any kind of the problem from the mortgage side.
Thank you very much, Vasilisa. And so if we have any other questions, please submit them to the chat and we will send them to the speaker. So thank you very much, Denis. Thank you very much, Vasilisa. So going from the macroeconomic overview, we are going to the ground. So Vasilisa, could you stop screen sharing? Oh, great. Thank you. And we are going to Russian regions. And first of all, I would like to say thank you very much to Lipetsk region, which is one of the partner of our today webinar and overall partner of our events. You can see on the backside the logo of Lipetsk region. And before giving the microphone to Evgenia Loktionova, head of the Investment and Innovation Department of Lipetsk region, I would few words mention that just today our partners from RAEX Analytics, they published another rating of investment attractiveness, and Lipetsk region is still among the leaders on the risks in terms of minimal risks. And a few figures from the region. So as mentioned in the analytics from our partners, so the first half year 2020, the overall capital investment declined by 4% in country, and in half of the regions there is a decline already in the first half a year, and it could be even more if the capital investments from the budget decline, but they are growing actually. So for January, August, the growth was around 35% year over year. One of the main problem is the net personal income. So in 95% of the regions we have decline, and last year only 27% of the regions show the decline. And the same problem related is the decline of overall retail trade turnover. So it's already declined by 5%, and 85 regions of Russian Federation already have the negative dynamic. The same negative trend for the unemployment. So it's already around 6% as compared to 4.6% the same period of the last year. And unfortunately, this is also seen in many regions. And to summarize the figures, so we have some approximations of the regional GDP in the second quarter. Year over year, it was -8%, and we see that in the majority of the core regions, so which is have the largest share in the country GDP, we already have this decline. But saying that, we have here, I guess, a good example. So as I understand, we will have slides in English, but Evgenia will make a speech in Russian, and I will make a brief translation. So, Evgenia, микрофон is yours. Я перехожу на русский язык. Евгения, пожалуйста, вы можете сделать скриншер, и я буду кратко делать перевод вашей речи по слайдам.
Добрый день, дорогие друзья, дорогие партнеры. Я хочу познакомить вас с Липецкой областью, рассказать о том, что мы из себя представляем, и немножко рассказать о наших достижениях.
Hello, everyone. I would like to make a presentation about Lipetsk Oblast and tell about our partners, about what we are doing, who we are.
Мы располагаемся в непосредственной близости до Москвы. Расстояние до Москвы составляет всего 450 километров.
Lipetsk region is not far from Moscow. It's around 450 kilometers from Moscow.
И мы можем смело утверждать, что инвесторы найдут доступ к 100-миллионному рынку по численности потребителей в радиусе 1000 километров.
And we are happy to announce that for the investors there is access to the consumer market of 100 million customers in the radius of the 1000 kilometers.
Через регион проходит крупнейшая автомобильная магистраль, связывающая Московский регион и Черное море.
The region is crossed by the largest highway connecting the Moscow region and the Black Sea region.
Это наша гордость. Нам доверяют крупнейшие компании мира.
The largest companies of the world trust us, and
есть немецкие компании, компании с участием немецкого капитала, работающие в регионе.
And there are a lot of companies with German equity working in the regions.
Это КВС, Bayer, Ропа, Хорш, Висман, Рационал, Беттерман.
Yeah, so the names on the slide, you can see it.
Всего в Липецкой области действует более 2000 промышленных предприятий.
In overall, in the region, there are more 2,000 industrial companies who are operating in Lipetsk region.
И у нас расположена и работает одна из крупнейших металлургических компаний в мире. Это Новолипецкий металлургический комбинат с общей выручкой свыше 10 миллиардов долларов.
And one of the largest metallurgical companies in the world, Novolipetsk Metallurgical Combinat, is located in a region with a total revenue of around 10 billions of US dollars and produces over 17 millions of tons of steel.
В течение 15 лет, по мнению международного рейтингового агентства RAEX-Europe, мы демонстрируем минимальный риск инвестирования.
According to the data from the RAEX rating agency, over the last 15 years, the Lipetsk region demonstrates the minimum risk of investments for investments.
Fitch подтвердил наш уровень на уровне BB+.
And the Fitch rating confirmed the credit rating of region at BB+ level.
Компании из Германии, Австрии, Бельгии, Италии, Франции, Великобритании, США, Японии, более 17 стран мира основали свои производства и успешно ведут бизнес на территории нашего региона.
Companies from Germany, Austria, Belgium, Italy, and more than 15 different countries established their production facilities in the region and successfully doing business in Lipetsk region.
Мы можем удовлетворить запросы любого инвестора.
We'll be happy to support all requests from any investor.
Но большинство крупнейших компаний с участием иностранного капитала расположены в особой экономической зоне Липецк.
But majority of the companies with the foreign capital are located in the special economic zone Lipetsk, CS.
Особая экономическая зона Липецк представляет из себя две площадки, территориально расположенные в Липецкой области, общей площадью 2400 гектар.
Lipetsk CS is having the two sites with a total area of 2,000 hectares.
Одна расположена в городе Липецк, другая в городе Елец с населением 100 тысяч жителей.
One of which is located in Lipetsk and another one in Yelets with a population of over 100,000 inhabitants.
Оба города – это промышленно развитые центры с мощными федеральными вузами с политехническим направлением.
And both cities are industrial centers with powerful federal universities with a polytechnic focus.
На территории особой экономической зоны расположились 65 резидентов из 16 стран мира.
On the territory of the special economic zone, there is a. Could you repeat? Не могли бы повторить количество?
65 резидентов, 16 стран мира.
Yeah, there's 65 residents from 16 countries of the world.
Площадка инфраструктурно обеспечена.
The sites are supported by the infrastructure.
Резиденты могут пользоваться налоговыми и таможенными льготами.
And all residents of the CES can use tax and custom support and benefits.
На территории Грязинской площадки уже работают 26 компаний.
On the territory of Grazin site, there is 26 companies already working.
На территории Елецкой площадки, которая расположена прямо на федеральной трассе М4 Дон.
On the territory of the another site, which is located on the highway Don, there is a.
7 октября начал работать наш первый завод. Это завод «Шанс» по производству средств защиты растений.
So the first factory started to operate on this site, which is factory Shans on the chemical protection of the plants. Producing chemical protection of the plants, sorry.
Помимо этого ведутся строительные и подготовительные работы компании Bayer Gillets Production и КВС РУС.
Apart from this, there is a construction activity from Bayer КВС РУС on this same site.
Мы гордимся тем, что наши резиденты особой экономической зоны строят с нами вторые и третьи очереди своих производств.
We are proud that all residents of our CES building the second and the third sizes of their factories.
Наши инвесторы, наши партнеры активно принимают участие и в социальных проектах.
Our partners and our investors are actively participating in the social projects.
Сложно сейчас охватить всех, я озвучу лишь несколько. Это компания Бикард, бельгийская компания, которая ежегодно устраивает футбольный кубок на День Бельгии.
It's difficult to mention everyone, but I would just mention a few ones. So first of all, it's Bicard Lipetsk, which is doing an annual football cup on the Belgium Day.
И активно помогает детям строить детские комплексы, оказывает помощь детскому онкоцентру, школам-интернатам.
And actively provides assistance to the children cancer certain boarding schools and internats. And building children's complex. Sorry?
Компания Йокогама проводит благотворительные акции для фонда «Дети и родители против рака».
And Yokohama company making an action for the children and parents against the cancer foundation.
И, естественно, все наши компании, все наши инвесторы активно включились и оказывали помощь по борьбе с коронавирусной инфекцией.
And for sure, we need to mention that all our investors, all our company actively support the actions against the COVID infection.
Мы рады пригласить в нашу Липецкую область.
We are happy to invite to our Lipetsk region.
Спасибо, у меня все.
Thank you very much. So, остаюсь на английском. Спасибо большое, Evgenia. So if everyone had some specific questions probably about the region, and please submit them to the chat. And I have the question to Evgenia. First, I will ask in English, then repeat in Russian. So what about the investments results for 2020? What is your expectation for figures specifically for this year? Евгения, если у вас есть предварительная информация по 2020 году, по инвестиционной активности, может быть, вы можете поделиться предварительными результатами с нами. Вы на мьюте? Вы на мьюте, Евгения?
Да. Пока итоги подводить рано, но я поделюсь с той статистической информацией за 9 месяцев, которая есть. Мы гордимся тем, что мы занимаем 3-й и 4-е места по ЦФО, по объему инвестиций в основной капитал.
So I will share the figures for 9 months of 2020. We are proud to be on the 3rd, 4th place on the Central Federal District on the capital investments.
Инвестиции в основной капитал за 9 месяцев выросли более чем на 12%.
So we have a growth of capital investments over the last 9 months is 2020 more than 12% year over year.
И мы остаемся в положительном индексе промышленного производства. Для нас это важно, потому что промышленность в ВРП Липецкой области составляет 40%. Мы промышленный регион.
So we are industrial region, and we are happy to see that we are still positive in terms of the index of the industrial production, because the share of industrial is around 40% of GDP of Lipetsk region. That's it. Да? Вы на мьюте, Евгения? У вас есть что-то добавить?
Нет, у меня все.
Спасибо большое. Thank you very much. So thank you for this presentation. And if you would mind, we will share this presentation with all participants with your contacts. Если вы не возражаете, Евгений, мы презентацию отправим всем коллегам вместе с вашими контактами. И если у нас будут вопросы еще в чате, мы будем также их направлять вам. So if we have any questions in the chat, we will also send them to you later. Thank you very much again. And last but not least, so we start today webinar with overall description on the situation with the foreign investors, macroeconomic situation in Russia from my colleague Denis and from Vasilisa from Gazprom Bank. We have few figures about the region and one specific region, which is Lipetsk Oblast. And last but not least, I see Sergei Smirnov from Higher School of Economics, Central Development Institute. The same as last time, we would like to give a microphone to you with a consensus forecast for Russia 2020-21. It's a great project. We think that it's basically accumulation of different results, what the analytics and the think tanks in Russia think about the our nearest future. So, Sergey, we already can see your presentation, so please change it to screen share mode. So I hope my colleagues...
I'll try to do this.
Yeah, so
yes.
Great. Yeah, we can see it, we can hear it. The microphone is yours.
Well, thank you. Dear colleagues, I try to be short as it's possible. First, I say several words about our survey. We have conducted it for 20 years. It's a quarterly survey, and we ask for 16 macro indicators, and 5 of them are our focus. You may see the list of these indicators. They are real GDP, CPI, exchange rate, key interest rate of Bank of Russia, and Urals oil price. For these indicators, we ask experts for their forecasts for 7 years and for 8 quarters. Here you may see the list of our participants for the latest survey, which was conducted in the end of October and beginning of November. You may see that there are a lot of very authoritative Russian and international banks, investment banks, analytical groups, and so on. There are a lot of really very authoritative experts in Russian economy. Here you may see the results of our latest survey and the survey which was conducted half a year ago. The first result is that the reality was not so bad as it was awaited in May, in the beginning of May. Now we know the actual data for the second and the third quarter of this year, and you may see that it is better than it was forecasted in the beginning of May. As for other quarters, the experts are not so optimistic. Meanwhile, for the 2021, as for CPI, you may see that once again, the reality was better than it was awaited. And you may also see that in the long run, experts forecast CPI below 4%. The same picture for the exchange rate. You may see that in reality Russian ruble wasn't so weak as it was awaited, and you may also see that in the horizons of several quarters, it will be stronger than now. And once again, the reality was not so bad in the market of oil price, of oil. The oil price in reality was much higher than it was awaited in May. So what we can tell about the COVID-19 recession? First, it's rather a V-shaped recession, but full recovery will be achieved only by the end of 2021. Second, inflation risks are low. The situation is fully under control from the central bank. Probably it's somebody thinks that it is probable that the central bank will lower the key rate tomorrow, and the exchange rate and Euro's oil price will return to the levels which are quite comfortable for Russia. And in reality, the price of oil recovery is even more rapid than the experts' anticipations. As for long-run consensus forecasts, we may see that the long-run GDP growth rate is around 2% per year, that CPI forecasts correspond to the current Bank of Russia target, 4% per year, then that the exchange rate of ruble is rather stable because the difference between the years, in fact, is quite behind the difference for 1 week or even several days. Two rubles per dollar is not a great difference, even in the monthly horizons. And if we say about long run, then it is quite stable. The same may be told about the key interest rate of Bank of Russia. Some experts think that in 2 years there will be some that it will be higher than now. And as for oil price, experts think that it will be around $50 per barrel in 2-year horizons. But in fact, we have this level of price just now. So it may be that the reality will be better than these forecasts once more.
Oh, yeah, that's it, I guess.
Yes, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that our experts do not afraid of the second wave of pandemic. They are more optimistic now than they were in the beginning of May, because in the beginning of May, everybody was afraid. It was full unknown perspectives, and now, as there are no lockdowns in many countries and no perspectives of lockdown in Russia, experts believe that it will be better than in the spring of 2020. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sergey. That's very interesting point you mentioned, and just now after, so basically today is the official start of the lockdown in Germany, for example. But I can also understand from the expert's point of view that we are basically in the second wave now. And we see that the lockdown are not that strict as it was at spring. There's confirmation, but there's still some measures. And for instance, at least here in Germany, we see that some businesses will be closed for sure for the Christmas season and probably till spring, and this will affect the dynamic, but not that hard as it was in spring. And as I understand, in Russia, at least in the Moscow, we see that there is no expectations to have the same lockdown as it was in spring.
Yes.
So we remind that we have some time for Q&A part, for questions from the chat or audience. And so, Sergey, would you like to add something for your presentation?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for participation. It's a great to see these figures once again, as we did in July. And hope to see the new forecast. When is actually planning to issue the new forecast?
In the end of January.
End of January, great.
When annual figures will be available. So it's a quartal survey, and we always conduct it just after the information of the quarter. So it's 1 month later than the end of quarter.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So any questions can be submitted to the chat or asked. I see Denis, you're... No.
I just want to add some words about lockdown. Difference between lockdown, in my opinion, difference between Russia and the European Union. For example, we will see that the Russia economy less dependent on the service sector, which are mostly affected by lockdown. So that's why I think Russia experienced, and we see that consequences were not with the GDP decline was not so, as Vasilisa mentioned, as in Europe was so strong. And this time we see that Sergey also mentioned that this lockdown is more more easy for Russia, and as well as like one of the weaknesses dependent on oil gas industry. It's help Russia to experience these tough times. And
Thank you. Vasilisa, if you're here, probably you can also mention something about your expectation about this second wave and current lockdown. So I, okay, yeah.
Yes, I'm here. So you mean my expectations? Well, I think that the second wave is right now. You mean the third wave?
No, I mean just what was your expectation this spring? And so basically we are all in the second wave already, and it's not economically, at least not that hard as many people expected before. So just compare of your view from spring and your current view.
Well, I think that my view hasn't changed because I have expected that the second wave will be not that severe as it was the first one. Now, all the hospitals, all the other services were prepared for the second wave, and this it explains the fact that we see right now that the impact of the second wave is much lower. As you remember in my presentation, I had a graph with the incoming financial flows and their deviation from the normal level, it's like a fast indicator of the central bank. And here we've seen that the deviation now is around zero. So in the first quarter, then in the second quarter, when we saw the first wave, the deviation was minus 10 to minus 20%. Now it's minus zero. So the impact of the second wave on the economic growth, if we're talking about Russia, is not very big.
Great, thank you for sharing your opinion. We will see figures for Germany because here it's, at least for the service sector, as Denis mentioned, it's very sensitive for the economy. Saying that, I would like to make a few words about our future. So first of all, we would like to invite everyone to our sustainability webinars, which will start in January with the first yearly webinar together with AHK Green Tech. We also continue these sovereign risks webinars with additional countries, not only Russia, but other countries from CIS. And finally, I would like to mention another online event supported by our company called Financing Export and Import in Russia, which will take place 2nd of February 2021 for Russian international banks and cooperation partners. They can share their experience for working and developing trade finance relationship during the pandemic times, and we will share the contact details and more information about this event organized by our partners from Worldwide Expert Conference, and hope to see you 2nd February 2021. Yeah, we think that only online still, and I would like to say thank you to HK and especially Lipetsk region supported today's webinar, and saying thanks for all speakers, namely Matthias Schepp from HK, Vasilisa Baranova from Gazprom Bank, Evgenia Laktionova from Lipetsk region, and last but not least, Sergei Smirnov from High School of Economy. We hope to see you next year. We wish you good holidays, stay safe, healthy, and see you on our events in the future. Thank you very much.